Welcome back. Ed Martin here in the Pro America Report. And I have to tell you, if you have not seen the video, and I haven't seen the follow-up that the couple from St. Louis who stood in front of their home and told the protesters to get away, the husband of that husband and wife is doing interviews, and I haven't seen any of them, but I think they'll be interesting. They put out a statement saying that they support the idea of Black Lives Matter, and then this is great. They said two things. One is the agitators there weren't black, they were white, which is funny because if you see pictures of Black Lives Matter, it looks like mostly kind of liberal white kids. But that's funny that he says that. And then he went on to basically say we did the right thing. So we'll see. That story's going to get some legs. But let's turn to something else. I want to make sure that you hear this story. We've talked in the last few weeks, but this is a freight train coming for America. We're in the tunnel. I don't know how to do this. I'm making a mess of it. But it's a disaster in the making for America, and that is mail-in voting. And a place that I am very familiar, Paterson, New Jersey, is a place not far from where I grew up. Paterson, New Jersey had their elections last week, not long ago, a few weeks ago. And the elections have led to a series of indictments of folks who cheated on the election in Paterson, New Jersey. In other words, they used, and they did it on mail-in ballots. And so the election, which is in Paterson, New Jersey, it had a widespread fraud. 800 ballots were fraudulent. And it looks like, I guess it was, 3,100 ballots were disqualified, which is 19% of the total ballots cast. And 800 of those were invalidated for appearing in mailboxes improperly bundled together. In other words, they were likely harvested. So there's been indictments. The story's going to get legs. Here's what you need to know about this story. We've been talking about it for a month. This question of mail-in ballots is the question in terms of voter irregularities, in terms of the possibility of fraud. Because absentee ballots are when you're going to be away in the military, you're going to be away on work, you're going to have surgery the day before the election. You request an absentee ballot, you sign a piece of paper saying that you're not going to be there, and then you mail it into the election authority. They make note of that request, and then you get one sent to you. You see, that requires at least one affirmative action, really two. One is to say, yes, I'm out of town, and the other one is to vote. You have to do two affirmative actions, which just it lessens the likelihood of fraud. While it's true that you could call up and say, I hereby request an absentee ballot application for my grandmother, and when it comes, you could fill it out for your grandmother, and you could mail it in, and your grandmother could then be mailed a ballot, and you could then commit voter fraud. It requires, as you can see, 2 or 3 affirmative acts of fraud. If you mail the whole shooting match of everybody on a file a mail-in ballot, it requires nothing except one act, vote it, and give it to someone to turn in. So it's wide open. And the question becomes, if Paterson, New Jersey, all Democrat, by the way, Paterson, New Jersey's relatively, is predominantly minority, African-American and some of the Hispanic minorities, but predominantly minority and also pretty low income. It's a pretty tough city. It's got some commonalities with places like Newark. It's not far from Newark, relatively, and Camden is a little further from there. But this is an urban setting, all Democrat, and they're cheating on each other. When I was chairman of the Board of Elections in the city of St. Louis, we had a special election for an aldermanic race, and it was all Democrats. And they were cheating on each other. In other words, power will cheat, doesn't matter on which party. So the question in the fall, in the November 3rd, 2020 election, what is the role of mail-in balloting? How do you manage the reality of fraud? What can we do to limit it? How does it get done? And it's a big problem. And I've been asking all sorts of election authorities. You should ask in your county, in your state. And I've been asking anyone I can get to. Jay Ashcroft, the Missouri Secretary of State. Certainly you can have judges, poll watching judges who can see when you're judging absentee ballots and mail-in ballots and signatures. But here's a question I want to ask. This could be the great solution. Why not do all of the mail-in ballots and stream it on the internet so that you put it on the internet so that people can watch from home? And so that if there's any shenanigans, remember what I've always told you about elections. And election authorities and the question of how to manage elections. There are 2 priorities when you run an election. And the number one is Get people to do the job well. It's not that easy in a way. You're asked to basically perform 3 or 4 days a year on a task that's very complicated. It's lots of pieces, lots of action, lots of unforeseen stuff. The weather changes, the thing changes, the candidates, all that. So 3 or 4 days of the year, you have to perform at the highest level. So it takes a lot of work, a lot of practice, a lot of getting the right systems in place and all that. And you have to be good at it. It takes a real effort. Election authorities are really challenging, and they do, by and large, they do a great job. But the second part is you have to instill in people the confidence that their vote counts, that the system is working, that it's not abused. And that is where you do outreach and people know, and that's where you do things like help people register to vote and help them understand what's happening, and you talk to new communities of immigrants, all these things. Well, if you allow this mail-in balloting, first of all, you're going to have a problem managing it, doing it well. And second, you're going to have a problem of delegitimizing people of the election system and people's confidence in it. Now, if you're the left, you've shown you don't really care about delegitimizing anything. You're happy to do it with schools, you're happy to do it with law enforcement, you're happy to do it with military, you're happy to do it with churches, and you're happy to do it with elections. But if you're not, if you're a good American, you don't want this to happen. You want the elections to be people that see that it works. So that's my pitch. I'm going to find out about it. I'm going to see if there's a way to live stream the checking of mail-in ballots and absentee ballots and counting ballots. Imagine that. All right, we got to run. We got a lot more. We got a great busy week. Happy Independence Day week. I hope you're celebrating all week long. Thank you to Randy for filling in, our technical producer of usual. Noah is out, and he'll be back soon, hopefully. Thank you to Joanna for booking the show, and thank you for listening. We will be back tomorrow. It's Ed Martin here on the Pro America Report. Talk to you then.